Welcome back to the channel, all you beautiful people out there, and all you crazy people too, because I definitely got some crazies that be commenting. Got some beautiful people and some crazies. Hey, it just creates balance. We good. So with that being said, today we got why Trump could actually be great for Europe's economy, and this is by TLDR News. Original link will be in the description. So with that being said, what's smoking on my dragons? Divine righteous, almighty greats overachieving, never slacking. We flying back over to Europe, and yeah, let's see what they got to say, guys. Every aspect. Gotta listen to every aspect and just be able to sit down and put everything together. But gotta listen. Gotta listen. I feel like in my generation personally, from what I notice, it seems like the biggest issue amongst millennials is they don't really like to listen to too much. So I like to listen. That's why I know some people probably like, why are you? It just seems like you're one day you're for this and one day you're for that. First off, once again, I am an independent, but I do like to listen to everything and learn and just kind of break things down and just leave no room to really have to guess, right? But with that being said, we're gonna hop in the video. Here we go. Let's get to it.
This video was brought to you by Incogni. On Wednesday, Trump slapped insane tariffs on all of America's major trading partners, including a 20% flat tariff on the EU. Well, this has caused some understandable anxiety in Brussels, but in certain respects, America's protectionist turn could create some incredible opportunities for the EU. So in this video, we thought we'd explain why, while Trump might cause some pain in the short term, in the long term, this could be genuinely great for the European economy. We're getting remarkably close to 1 million subscribers, and currently 72% of you haven't.
Round of applause to him for that. Seriously, that is one heck of an accomplishment. Let me tell ya, YouTube is not easy. It's not at all. So shout out to him.
Yet subscribed. So lend us a hand and subscribe today. So the first thing to make clear is that Trump's trade wars will incur some short-term pain. Europe exports a lot of stuff to the US, and Trump's 20% tariff will mean less demand for these goods. And it's not even like any other country can really replace the US in this respect. American consumers just buy more stuff than basically anyone else, and the uncertainty created by Trump's trade wars will probably dampen consumer demand elsewhere too. Trump's trade wars will also exacerbate anxieties about Europe's deindustrialization, given that a large fraction of these exports are industry adjacent, and that Trump's 54% tariff on China risks inviting a flood of Chinese exports, as Chinese businesses are now effectively unable to sell to the US market, redirecting their goods to Europe instead, pushing down prices further and putting more strain on their European competitors. However, in the medium to long term, there are reasons to think that Trump could actually be, well, really quite good for the European economy, for at least 5 reasons. The first is that the uncertainty that Trump has created in the US has made America way less investable, and at least some of this money that would have been invested in the US will now...
Wait a minute. How crazy is that to say that America is like way less investable? After America, you get what I'm saying? Like, this is where we at in 2025. That's crazy to hear. Like, that's crazy.
now shift into the EU. This is largely why, since January, European stocks have massively outperformed American stocks, as investors shift their cash from the US into the EU. The Stoxx 600, an index covering 600 European companies, is currently slightly up in this period, while the S&P 500, another index covering the 500 biggest American companies, is down an astonishing 8%, its worst quarter since the pandemic. This is a marked reversal of a long-running trend, because since really 2009, European stocks have generally underperformed US ones. Another reason that investors might move their money from the US to the EU is the erosion of the rule of law that we've seen under Trump. As well as Trump's rhetorical assault on the judiciary, there have also been some glaring cases of blatant corruption. For instance, crypto entrepreneur Justin Sun was being investigated by the SEC until he bought $75 million of crypto tokens from World Liberty Financial, a crypto venture associated with Trump. And then, well, the SEC suddenly dropped the suit. Now, fretting about rule of law might seem like a soppy liberal indulgence, but upholding the rule of law is actually just good for the economy. And that's because investors will only invest if they know that contracts will be enforced and disputes litigated in good faith. Anyway, the second reason is human capital. In short, America is becoming a less attractive place to live and work, and Europe can benefit from this by attracting smart people who would otherwise go to the US and drive up US economic growth.
Sounds like the tables is turning from how he breaking it down. I mean, US, where are we headed, y'all?
The number of Americans moving to Europe was already on the rise before Trump, as was the number of Americans saying they wanted to leave the US, with Gallup polling from the last year finding that a record 21% of Americans wanted to permanently relocate to another country. But it's not just about Americans moving to Europe, it's also about non-Europeans and non-Americans looking to immigrate. Again, America was already becoming a less attractive place for international immigrants, and this trend will presumably accelerate under Trump. And this is especially true for students. For decades, America has been one of the most desirable places to study, but Trump's assault on American universities, which he sees as bastions of the liberal establishment, will presumably make it less attractive for international students. After all, who would want to go to an American uni when there's a chance that you could be arbitrarily detained or deported because of something you've posted on social media?
Yeah, that's definitely going to have a major effect, especially after I look more into the cases of the people that have been detained and the details behind it. I'm sure there's a lot of people that aren't really that interested in being in America. Those that are from America and not from America. So,
Or even just because you come from a so-called unfriendly country. These students will probably instead opt for unis in the EU or UK, giving Europe an upper hand in terms of human capital. Anyway, the third reason that Trump could be good for the EU is that it might actually help Europe to re-industrialize. Trump's tariffs are nominally about bringing manufacturing and industry back to the US, because in theory, tariffs will force companies who want to sell in the US market to set up factories and manufacturing centers in America. However, because they've been designed so poorly, they'll probably have the reverse effect. Trump's universal 10% tariff, for instance, will make all components more expensive, which will ultimately reduce the competitiveness of American manufacturers. If Trump wanted to, say, rejuvenate America's auto industry, he should have just tariffed cars, not everything, including car parts, because that actually puts American car makers at a disadvantage too. More generally, building out factories takes years of steady investment, which is unlikely to happen given the uncertainty surrounding Trump's trade policy. Plus, the risk that it could all just be undone by his successor. Industrial companies looking to build new factories in a predictable business environment might well turn to the EU instead, especially given that the EU is in the process of developing a more active industrial policy. The fourth reason that Trump could ultimately be good for Europe is that he could force European policymakers to boost domestic demand. As evidenced by Europe's reoccurring trade surpluses, the EU has long relied on exports to fuel its economy. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does leave you vulnerable to external trade shocks, and is one of the big reasons that the EU economy has struggled so much over the past few years. Well, the best performing European economies have almost all been those with relatively strong domestic demand. The sudden withdrawal of the American market could, in the long term, help Europe to rebalance its economy towards domestic demand, rather than exports, which could make it more resilient going forwards. The fifth reason is a little speculative, but there's at least a good chance that the euro could go some way to replacing the dollar as the world's reserve currency, i.e. the currency that central banks and other big financial institutions like to hold in their foreign exchange reserves. We've done a whole video on this recently, but the TLDR is that Trump's unorthodox economic policy risks undermining the dollar's reserve status. And the fact that the dollar has declined at the same time as American stocks suggests that this process is already underway. That's because in the past, the dollar has normally strengthened during times of uncertainty, because investors used to see it as a safe asset, which is why they liked holding it in their reserves. If the euro were to replace the dollar in this respect, it would both strengthen the euro, helping to boost imports and domestic demand, and potentially allow European countries to borrow at lower rates, in the same way that the US gets to. So, there you have it. While Trump's far-reaching tariffs and wider policies will cause some pain for Europe, they also present the continent with some pretty considerable economic opportunities. Now, as we've demonstrated in this video, there's a huge amount of uncertainty in the world about politics and current affairs, often with few easy solutions. Unfortunately, this can be the case online too. There are all kinds of bad actors out there that want to try and use you to make a quick buck. Take, for instance, data brokers. They sell your data to businesses and marketing agencies, leading to more spam calls, texts, and emails. Or even worse, they can sell your data to even worse actors who can go on to use your identity. Some data brokers have even been charged with conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud for internationally supplying data lists of elderly and vulnerable people to scammers. Fortunately, today's sponsor Incogni can help to rectify this. They work on your behalf to request your personal data removal. They also deal with any objections, and to make sure that your personal information isn't just shared by the brokers again, they conduct repeated removal requests. And with their family and friends plan, they'll even do this for you and up to 3 of, well, your friends and family. So create an account with our link in the description, granting Incogni the ability to work on your behalf, and sit back as they make you safer. Plus, if you use our link, you'll get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan. So thanks for checking it out, and thanks to Incogni for sponsoring this video.
Whew. So guys, with that being said, everything Trump's doing and everything that's going on could really benefit Europe. Could Europe become the new America? I know there's a lot of people that ain't gonna like me saying that, and there's a lot of people that may like me saying that, but nah, I'm serious though. Could Europe become the new, when I say America, I mean like the new, like top dog, the big dog. I mean, could they be the new dream, the European dream? They go from the American dream to the European dream. I mean, it's possible. Anything's possible. This could very likely be the fall of America as we know it, for sure. Or it could be the rise. Guess that's still up for debate. We're just gonna have to keep sitting back and seeing what happens. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Original link in the description. I'll be back with more soon. Much love.